The unexpected sound. The Galactic Empire was at peace. For centuries, it had ruled the galaxy with unmatched power. Its fleets patrolled the stars, and its technology controlled entire planets. In the Imperial Palace, the rulers celebrated their dominance, confident that no one could challenge them. They had crushed rebellions before they even began and silenced any whispers of resistance. To them, the galaxy was theirs, and nothing could ever change that. But peace is often the quiet before a storm. It began as a faint, unfamiliar sound, a steady beep coming from the Imperial Command Center. Commander Terran, a veteran officer who had served the Empire for decades, frowned as he looked at the glowing red dot on the star map. "What is that?" he asked, his voice sharp. A junior officer hesitated before replying. "Sir, it's an unidentified fleet. It just appeared on the edge of our outermost sector." Terran's frown deepened. The edges of the Empire's borders were remote and unimportant. Pirates sometimes caused trouble there, but they were usually dealt with quickly. Still, something about this felt different. "Zoom in," Terran ordered. The star map adjusted, and the fleet came into view. It wasn't like anything the Empire had seen before. Dozens of ships hovered in formation, their sleek, dark designs casting an eerie presence. They moved with precision, almost as if they were alive. "Who sent them?" Terran demanded. "Which faction dares challenge the Empire?" The officer stammered. "Sir, they don't match any known signatures in our database. Their technology is unrecognizable." Terran felt a chill run down his spine. The Empire had mapped the galaxy thoroughly. Every civilization, every star system, every potential threat was cataloged and monitored. Whoever these intruders were, they weren't supposed to exist. "Send a message," Terran barked. "Demand their identification and intentions. If they don't respond, prepare the fleet to intercept." The message was sent, but the mysterious ships didn't reply. Instead, they continued their silent march toward the Empire's territory. The tension in the command center grew thicker with each passing moment. Terran's superior, Admiral Vorik, entered the room. He was a towering figure with a reputation for ruthlessness. His cold eyes scanned the screen, and his jaw tightened. "Commander Terran," Vorik said, his voice like steel. "What is the situation?" Terran quickly explained, but Vorik didn't need long to understand. "This is no ordinary fleet," he muttered. "This is an act of defiance. Whoever they are, they will learn what happens to those who challenge the Empire." But deep down, even Vorik felt uneasy. On one of the mysterious ships, Captain Arlen stood at the command deck, staring at a holographic map of the Empire's territory. Around him, his crew worked silently, their faces grim but determined. "Have they responded?" Arlen asked. "No, Captain," a crew member replied. "They've sent a message demanding we identify ourselves, but we've ignored it as planned." "Good," Arlen said. "Let them wonder. Let them fear." For decades, humanity had been a forgotten corner of the galaxy. The Empire had once enslaved them, using humans as laborers and experimental subjects. But humans were resilient. They had escaped, hidden in the shadows, and rebuilt their civilization far away from the Empire's watchful eyes. Now, they were ready to strike back. "Keep the fleet steady," Arlen ordered. "We need to lure them into making the first move. The longer they hesitate, the weaker they become." The crew nodded, their resolve unshaken. They all knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a mission. It was humanity's chance for justice. Back in the command center, Terran and Vorik watched as the mysterious fleet crept closer. "Admiral," Terran said hesitantly, "should we call for reinforcements? If this fleet is as advanced as it appears, we may need more ships." Vorik sneered. "Reinforcements? Against these upstarts? Don't be ridiculous, Commander. Our fleet is more than enough." But as the mysterious ships drew nearer, doubts began to creep into the minds of the officers. What kind of civilization had built such advanced ships? And why were they heading straight for the Empire's heart? The air was thick with tension. The command center was silent except for the steady hum of machines and the occasional beep of the star map. Then suddenly, another alarm sounded. This one was louder, more urgent. "Sir," an officer shouted, "the unidentified fleet has just crossed into Imperial territory." Terran and Vorik froze. This was no longer a game of waiting. The mysterious fleet had made their move. "Admiral," Terran said cautiously, "what are your orders?" Vorik's eyes narrowed as he stared at the screen. He clenched his fists and said, "Prepare the fleet. If they want war, we'll give it to them." But as the Imperial fleet began to mobilize, no one could shake the feeling that they were about to face something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The Imperial fleet had gathered near the border, a dazzling array of powerful warships armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Admiral Vorik stood on the bridge of the flagship, his gaze fixed on the mysterious fleet displayed on the large screen. The ships remained motionless, their dark metallic hulls absorbing the light of nearby stars. "Open a communication channel," Vorik ordered. "Let's remind these intruders who rules the galaxy." Within seconds, a secure link was established. The bridge crew held their breath as Vorik spoke with a cold, commanding tone. "This is Admiral Vorik of the Galactic Empire. You are trespassing in Imperial territory. Identify yourselves immediately or prepare to be destroyed." For a long moment, there was silence. Then a figure appeared on the screen, a human man with sharp eyes and an air of quiet confidence. His uniform was simple, but his presence commanded respect. "I am Captain Arlen of the United Human Fleet," he said calmly. "We are here to deliver a message to your empire. Surrender now, and we will spare your people unnecessary suffering." Gasps echoed through the Imperial bridge. Humanity. The Empire had long dismissed humans as an insignificant species, barely worth noticing. Many in the Empire had forgotten they even existed. Vorik sneered. "Surrender? Do you even understand who you are talking to? The Galactic Empire has ruled this galaxy for centuries. Your fleet is nothing more than an annoyance, and you will regret challenging us." Arlen's expression didn't change. "You may believe that, Admiral, but your arrogance will be your downfall. Humanity has waited a long time for this moment. We are no longer the slaves you once oppressed. We are stronger, smarter, and more prepared than you can imagine." Before Vorik could respond, the communication was cut. The screen went dark, and tension filled the air. "Humans," Vorik said with a laugh, though there was a hint of unease in his voice. "This is some kind of elaborate joke. Commander Terran, send a message to the fleet. Prepare for an immediate attack. We'll crush them and send what's left back as a warning to anyone else who dares to defy us." On board the human flagship, Captain Arlen turned to his crew. "They didn't listen," Arlen said, his voice steady. "Just as we expected." One of the officers nodded. "Admiral Vorik is deploying their fleet. They're preparing to strike first." "Good," Arlen replied. "Let them come to us. The Empire has always relied on brute strength, but they've never faced an enemy like us. Activate the cloaking systems and prepare the fleet for Phase 1. The human ships began to shimmer and disappear from the Empire's sensors. To the Imperial fleet, it looked as though the mysterious intruders had vanished entirely. "Where did they go?" Terran asked, his voice laced with panic. "Our sensors can't track them," a technician reported. "It's as if they've disappeared into thin air." "Impossible," Vorik barked. "No fleet can hide from us. This is some kind of trick. Keep scanning, and ready all weapons." In the vast darkness of space, the human fleet silently moved into position. Hidden from sight, they surrounded the Imperial ships. Arlen watched the holographic display, where red dots represented the Empire's fleet, and blue dots showed the human ships closing in. "They still think they're the hunters," Arlen said with a grim smile. "Let's show them they're the prey." He raised his hand and gave the command, "Fire at will." Without warning, the human fleet unleashed their first strike. Invisible beams of energy ripped through the Empire's warships, disabling their shields and engines. Explosions lit up the blackness of space as several Imperial ships were destroyed before they could even respond. "What's happening?" Vorik roared as alarms blared across the bridge. "Our ships are under attack." An officer shouted, "We can't locate the enemy. They're hitting us from all sides." Panic spread among the Imperial fleet. They had faced countless enemies before, but none had ever fought like this. None had ever been so precise, so ruthless. Vorik clenched his fists. "This isn't over. Order all remaining ships to form a defensive line. We'll regroup and crush them." But deep down, he knew they were facing a force unlike any other. On board the human flagship, Captain Arlen watched the chaos unfold. He knew the Empire wasn't defeated yet. But this was just the beginning. "Send them another message," Arlen said, his tone icy. A broadcast was sent to every Imperial ship. The message was short but chilling. "This is your only warning. Surrender now, or the destruction will continue. Humanity has risen, and the Empire will fall." The Empire's desperation. The aftermath of the ambush was devastating for the Galactic Empire's fleet. Wreckage floated silently in the void, illuminated by the faint glow of dying fires. The once proud ships of the Empire now looked like shattered monuments to their arrogance. On board the Imperial flagship, Admiral Vorik paced the bridge, his calm demeanor replaced by barely concealed rage. Every officer on the bridge avoided his gaze, too afraid to speak. The alarms had finally stopped, but the tension in the air was unbearable. "Status report," Vorik demanded. Commander Terran swallowed hard. "Admiral, we've lost over half our fleet. Their attacks were surgical. Our shields failed instantly, and their weapons disabled critical systems. The enemy remains undetectable. It's as if they're ghosts. Ghosts don't destroy warships." Vorik snapped, "Find them." Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship, Captain Arlen stood before his crew, his expression calm but resolute. "They're panicking," Arlen said, gesturing to the tactical display, showing the scattered Imperial fleet. "This is the first time in centuries the Empire has faced an enemy it couldn't overpower. Their arrogance is their greatest weakness." "Should we launch Phase 2, Captain?" one of the officers asked. "Not yet," Arlen replied. "Let them feel the weight of their failure first. Fear is a powerful weapon." Back on the Imperial flagship, Vorik slammed his fist against the console. "Enough of this. I refuse to let a species as insignificant as humanity humiliate the Empire. Prepare the planetary destroyers. If they want war, we'll bring destruction on a scale they've never seen." A stunned silence filled the bridge. The planetary destroyers were the Empire's most feared weapons, capable of annihilating entire worlds in minutes. Deploying them was a declaration of total war. "Admiral," Terran began cautiously, "are you certain? Using the destroyers will send a message, but it could escalate the situation beyond control." Vorik's eyes burned with fury. "The situation is already out of control. Humanity thinks it can challenge the Empire. I'll remind them why no one dares to oppose us." As the Imperial fleet regrouped and the planetary destroyers powered up, the human fleet observed from the shadows. Every move the Empire made was being monitored. "They're preparing their destroyers," an officer reported to Captain Arlen. Arlen's expression darkened. "So, they're escalating, just as we expected. What are your orders, sir?" Arlen took a deep breath. "Activate the disruption satellites. It's time to show them the full extent of what humanity has achieved." The disruption satellites, hidden in orbit around the Imperial fleet, activated simultaneously. Waves of electromagnetic energy swept through the area, disabling communication systems and scrambling targeting arrays. The Empire's mighty fleet was thrown into chaos once again. "Admiral, we've lost control of the destroyers," an officer shouted on the Imperial flagship. "What do you mean, lost control?" Vorik demanded, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. "They're shutting down. It's as if someone is overriding our systems." At that moment, the human fleet decloaked, their ships now visible and arranged in a perfect formation around the Imperial fleet. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a silent display of their dominance. Captain Arlen's voice echoed across the Imperial channels. "Admiral Vorik, your destroyers are now under our control. Humanity's technology has surpassed your empires by decades, if not centuries. Surrender now, and we will spare your remaining fleet. Continue to resist, and you will leave us no choice but to annihilate every last one of you." Vorik's face twisted with rage, but for the first time, there was fear in his eyes. He turned to his officers. "There must be something we can do. Find a weakness in their fleet." "Admiral," Terran said quietly, "their fleet is flawless. We've underestimated them in every way." Vorik clenched his fists. The weight of his failure was crushing, but surrender was unthinkable. "Prepare all remaining ships for one final assault," he ordered. "If we're going down, we'll take as many of them with us as we can." On the human flagship, Arlen watched as the Imperial fleet made its desperate preparations. "They're choosing death over surrender," Arlen said, a hint of sadness in his voice. "So be it. Prepare Phase 3. The human fleet began to move, surrounding the Empire's ships even tighter. The final confrontation was imminent, and the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity's decisive blow. The battlefield was eerily quiet, with the vast expanse of space acting as the backdrop for the impending showdown. The Imperial fleet, battered and struggling, formed a defensive line, while the human fleet remained a wall of silent, deadly precision. The tension between the two forces was palpable, like a tightly wound spring ready to snap. On the Imperial flagship, Admiral Vorik stood at the center of the bridge, his jaw clenched and his eyes filled with defiance. Around him, officers scrambled to prepare the remaining ships for what they knew could be their final battle. "This is it," Vorik growled. "If we fall here, the Empire's legacy crumbles. We fight to the last man." Across the void, aboard the human flagship, Captain Arlen observed the Imperial fleet's movements with a calm and calculated demeanor. The room was silent except for the faint hum of machinery, every crew member waiting for the next command. "They're gathering for a last stand," one of Arlen's officers remarked. "Desperation makes them dangerous," Arlen replied. "But it also makes them predictable." He turned to his tactical officer. "Are the gravity traps ready?" "Yes, Captain," the officer confirmed. "They're in position and fully charged." Arlen gave a small, grim smile. "Good. Let's end this." The human fleet began to move. From a distance, it looked almost like a predator closing in on its prey. Each ship took its position with surgical precision, boxing in the Imperial fleet. The gravity traps, hidden devices designed to manipulate the fabric of space, activated simultaneously. Invisible waves of energy rippled outward, trapping the Imperial ships in pockets of warped space. The Empire's mighty vessels suddenly found themselves unable to move, as if invisible chains were holding them in place. "Admiral, we're immobilized," an officer on the Imperial flagship shouted, panic in his voice. Vorik's face twisted in fury. "What kind of sorcery is this?" "It's not sorcery," Terran said quietly. "It's human ingenuity. They've outthought us at every turn." Back on the human flagship, Arlen gave the order. "Begin the final assault. Target their weapon systems first. Disable, don't destroy. We want them to feel helpless." Human ships moved with precision, their weapons firing bursts of energy that struck the Imperial fleet with pinpoint accuracy. Each blast disabled a critical system, leaving the Empire's ships floating powerless in space. One by one, the Imperial vessels went dark, their once mighty presence reduced to little more than lifeless husks. The human fleet suffered no casualties, their tactics flawless and their technology superior. On the Imperial flagship, chaos erupted. Officers shouted over each other, trying to find a solution, but it was clear there was none. Vorik stood motionless, his hands gripping the edge of the console so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "They've defeated us without even breaking a sweat," Terran said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Admiral, we have to surrender. There's no other option." "Surrender," Vorik spat. "The Empire does not surrender." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. The Empire's reign of dominance was over. Captain Arlen's voice echoed across the Imperial channels once more. "Admiral Vorik, your fleet is defeated. Your ships are disabled, your weapons useless. Surrender now, and you will be spared. Resist, and I assure you, humanity will finish what it started." Vorik stared at the communication screen, his pride and rage warring with the cold reality of his situation. "What's your decision, Admiral?" Terran asked softly. The scene shifted to the human flagship, where Arlen waited for a response. The room was silent, the crew watching their captain with anticipation. Finally, a response came through. Vorik's face appeared on the screen, his expression one of reluctant defeat. "You may have won this battle," Vorik said, his voice filled with bitterness. "But humanity's arrogance will be its downfall. The Empire never forgets." Arlen's face remained stoic. "Perhaps you should remember this instead. Humanity only seeks peace. But if threatened, we will not hesitate to defend ourselves." Shadows of resistance. The aftermath of humanity's overwhelming victory sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. News of the Imperial fleet's defeat spread like wildfire, reaching distant planets and colonies that had long lived in fear of the Galactic Empire's iron rule. For the first time, whispers of rebellion began to rise among the oppressed. On board the human flagship, Captain Arlen stood in the observation deck, staring out at the now silent remnants of the Imperial fleet. The stars beyond twinkled peacefully, but Arlen's mind was far from at ease. "This was just the beginning," Arlen said quietly, addressing his second-in-command, Commander Vega. "The Empire won't take this humiliation lightly. They'll regroup, and when they do, they'll come back stronger." "Let them come," Vega replied, a glint of determination in her eyes. "We've shown them what humanity is capable of. We'll be ready." Far from the battlefield, in the heart of the Galactic Empire, Emperor Kale sat in his throne room, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. The defeat of his fleet was an insult he could not ignore. Around him, his advisors spoke in hushed tones, too afraid to meet his gaze. "The humans have proven to be more formidable than we anticipated," one advisor said cautiously. "Perhaps we should consider negotiations." "Negotiations," Kale thundered, rising from his throne. "You would have me bow to these upstarts?" "Never." Another advisor stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. "Your Majesty, if I may, humanity's technology has surpassed ours in ways we don't yet understand. But that doesn't mean they're invincible. Every strength has a weakness. We simply need to find theirs." Cal's eyes narrowed. "Then find it. I want humanity brought to its knees. And this time, we won't underestimate them." Meanwhile, back on Earth, celebrations erupted as the news of the fleet's victory reached the populace. Humanity had faced an enemy that had once seemed unbeatable and emerged triumphant. But even as the people cheered, those in power knew the fight was far from over. In a secret meeting room deep within the United Nations Space Command, leaders from across the world gathered to discuss the next steps. "The Empire won't forgive this defeat," one general said gravely. "We've poked a sleeping giant." "Then we need to prepare," said another. "Our fleet may have won this battle, but we need to ensure humanity can withstand whatever retaliation comes next. This victory has bought us time, nothing more." Unknown to humanity, the Empire's retaliation had already begun. Hidden agents embedded within human territories were sending back information to the Empire. They reported on Earth's defenses, weaknesses, and the locations of key military installations. In one such hidden outpost, an Imperial operative sent a transmission back to the Empire. "The humans are vulnerable in ways they don't yet realize. I've identified several targets that, if struck, would cripple their ability to defend themselves. The operative's message reached the Emperor, who listened with a cold smile. Good. Begin the operation. Let humanity feel the weight of their defiance. Back on the human flagship, Captain Arlen's instincts told him something was wrong. The Empire had fallen silent, too silent. It wasn't their nature to accept defeat so easily. Commander Vega, have our intelligence teams reported any unusual activity? Arlen asked. Nothing yet, Captain, Vega replied. But I don't trust it. The Empire isn't one to back down. Exactly, Arlen said. They're planning something. We need to stay ahead of them. Arlen ordered his team to increase surveillance and deploy scouts to monitor Imperial movements. He knew the Empire's silence was a trap, and he refused to be caught off guard. The Empire strikes back. The silence was broken in the dead of night. Alarms blared across Earth's orbital defense stations as an enormous, unidentified object entered human space. On the flagship, Captain Arlen rushed to the command center. What's happening? He demanded. Captain, we've detected a massive Imperial dreadnought, the tactical officer reported, his face pale. It's unlike anything we've seen before. It just appeared. No hyperspace signature, no warning. Arlen's eyes narrowed. They've developed stealth technology. Before Arlen could give further orders, a transmission cut through the static. The face of Emperor Kale filled the screen, his expression cold and menacing. Humans, Kale began, his voice echoing with authority. You may have won your little skirmish, but you've awakened a force far greater than you can comprehend. Surrender now, or face total annihilation. Arlen stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. We don't surrender. If you're here to threaten us, you've made a mistake. Kel's lips curled into a smirk. So be it. Let your destruction serve as a warning to any who dare defy the Empire. The transmission ended abruptly. The dreadnought began its assault. Massive beams of energy lanced out, striking human defense stations and tearing through their shields like paper. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as Earth's outer defenses crumbled one by one. Get me a status report, Arlen barked. They've taken out 3 of our orbital platforms already, Vega said, her voice tense. Our weapons are barely scratching their hull. Focus fire on their engines, Arlen ordered. We need to slow them down. Meanwhile, on the surface of Earth, panic spread among the population as news of the attack reached them. Cities went into lockdown, and evacuation orders were issued for key areas. But humanity wasn't ready to give up. In a hidden command bunker, scientists and engineers worked frantically on a secret project. Known only as Project Phoenix, it was humanity's last-ditch effort to level the playing field. We're running out of time, Dr. Ilara, the project's lead scientist, said urgently. If we don't deploy this now, there won't be anything left to save. Back in space, the human fleet launched a counterattack. Smaller, more agile ships darted around the dreadnought, targeting its weak points. But the Imperial vessel was relentless, its defenses impenetrable. We can't keep this up, Captain, Vega said. We're losing too many ships. Arlen's mind raced. He needed a plan, and fast. Divert all remaining power to the experimental weapon, he said. The experimental weapon hasn't been fully tested, the tactical officer warned. If we don't use it now, there won't be another chance, Arlen replied. Do it. As the dreadnought continued its assault, the human flagship powered up its experimental weapon. A low hum filled the ship as energy levels surged to dangerous levels. Target their power core, Arlen ordered. If we can disable it, we might stand a chance. The weapon fired, a blinding beam of energy cutting through the darkness of space. It struck the dreadnought squarely, causing its shields to flicker and fail. Direct hit, the tactical officer exclaimed. But the victory was short-lived. The dreadnought's weapons turned on the flagship, unleashing a devastating barrage. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring as fires broke out on multiple decks. Damage report, Arlen shouted. Shields are down. "We've lost engine power," Vega replied. "Humanity's last stand." The dreadnought loomed over Earth, its massive silhouette blotting out the stars. On the surface, panic gave way to resolve as humanity prepared for its final stand. The experimental Project Phoenix was Earth's last hope. Inside the hidden command bunker, Dr. Ilara worked furiously alongside her team. The device, a revolutionary energy weapon capable of generating a concentrated plasma burst, was ready to deploy. But there was a catch. It required an enormous power source, one that could only be supplied by Earth's main fusion reactor. "We'll have to drain the planet's energy reserves," Ilara said grimly. "If this fails, Earth will be defenseless." The decision was made. Across the world, power grids were shut down, plunging cities into darkness as energy was diverted to the Phoenix device. In orbit, the human fleet was on the verge of collapse. Captain Arlen's flagship was barely holding together, fires raging through its decks. But the crew refused to abandon their posts. "Captain, the fleet can't take much more of this," Vega said, her voice tight with urgency. "We just need to buy time," Arlen replied. "Hold the line, no matter what." The fleet rallied, their battered ships charging toward the dreadnought in a desperate attempt to draw its fire. On the surface, the Phoenix device powered up, emitting a low, ominous hum as energy levels surged. Dr. Ilara watched the readings anxiously. "We have one shot at this," she said, "targeting their reactor core now." A massive turret rose from the bunker, aimed directly at the dreadnought. As the device reached full power, the sky lit up with a blinding beam of energy. The beam struck the dreadnought, piercing its thick armor and hitting its reactor core. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, a massive explosion erupted from the dreadnought, sending shockwaves across space. On board the flagship, the crew erupted in cheers as the dreadnought began to break apart. "We did it," Vega exclaimed. But the celebration was short-lived. The explosion triggered a chain reaction, and debris from the dreadnought hurtled toward Earth. "Captain, we've got incoming debris," the tactical officer warned. "Activate planetary shields," Arlen ordered. On Earth, the remaining orbital defense platforms worked together to form a shield barrier. The debris slammed into the shields, lighting up the atmosphere in a dazzling display. Some pieces broke through, causing damage to cities, but the planet survived. The people of Earth watched from below, their cheers mixing with tears of relief. The Galactic Empire's greatest weapon had been destroyed, and humanity had survived against impossible odds. In the Empire's capital, Emperor Kale received the devastating news. His flagship was gone, and his forces had been humiliated. "This isn't over," Kale said, his voice cold. "They may have won this battle, but the war is far from finished." On board the flagship, Captain Arlen addressed his crew. "We've won today, but this victory came at a great cost. The Empire won't stop, and neither can we. Humanity must remain united if we are to survive what's coming." The crew saluted, their resolve stronger than ever.